I'm spokesperson for the SNP on constitutional matters. I cover the Cabinet Office, so it sort of falls within my brief, really, electoral reform. It's one of the reasons he sent me here, but I'm also here because I believe in it and have done for a very long time, and I'm very keen, personally, to try and get a multi-party campaign off the ground again in Britain for electoral reform. The system's broken. It's not fit for purpose in a modern multi-party democracy. It was designed when there were only two competing blocs, and so it doesn't represent people's views, and it leads to bad government, bad decisions. I believe Britain's getting governed pretty much in spite of Parliament rather than because of it. And we could do an awful lot better. I think a system where you get a majority government of any party that gets only 37% of the electorate, and 37% of those that vote, less than a quarter of the actual electorate endorsement. That's corrupt in my view, and I think it's also corrupting because it's ruining our democracy. It alienates people, it turns people off the political process, it makes them think it's got nothing for them, and ultimately that leads to resentment, and it spoils our democracy. So it should be better. Yeah, I mean, referenda are becoming all the rage, aren't they? And but I think it's worth pointing out that over the years and over the decades, there's been plenty of fairly major constitutional changes without referenda. People have a debate in public. They stand against each other at election. They put forward a manifesto, get a mandate, and then they make change. I mean, that's how Votes for Women came about in 1918. It's how we reduced the voting age to 18. It's how we might reduce the voting age to 16. Sure, there was a referendum to set up the Scottish Parliament, but the first thing the Parliament did was then change the voting system for local elections. There was no referendum for that. So I'm not convinced that a referendum is absolutely necessary on this question, to be honest. I think, if the proposition is to make things more democratic, who's going to argue against that, But if you are to have a referendum, I think we learned from the mistake of 2011, and you don't have a referendum on process, you have a referendum on principle. And instead of asking people a technocratic system about, do you think this system that you don't understand is better than this system that you don't understand, ask them about the principle. Ask them if they think that the representation of parties in Parliament should be based on the number of votes they get. I think if you ask that, you get most people say, yeah, well, of course, why not? To argue the opposite, to argue that the representation of parties in Parliament should not be based on the number of votes they get, seems to me a dubious democratic perspective. Well, we need to get organised. So, sign up, join this campaign, go online, put your money into it, put your mouth into it, link up with other people in your community that might be advocating for it, and let's get this ball rolling because it's long overdue. Make votes matter.org.uk